I'm not going to spend any time on introductions. You might have heard of a magazine called Time. And we happen to have the international picture editor here tonight, Patrick Witty. I'll leave it up to him to talk about his work, and he just told me that he was going to go quickly through the pictures because he wants to interact with you. A little bit of an anecdote before. Earlier today I got 2 quick emails from him. We were meant to be on a panel. We were on a panel at the EMK Center earlier today. And Patrick says, by the way, there's police and tear gas and all sorts of things going on outside my window. We arranged these things just to add special effect to Chovimala, so I just didn't want it to get alarmed. Patrick Witty.
It's weird. It seems like the little that I travel, everywhere I go, I smell tear gas. So it's kind of appropriate for my job because I send photographers in really dangerous places. What? Is this not good? I send photographers to very dangerous places from the confines of my safe desk in New York City, and I oftentimes feel guilty. And it's for a photo editor to send someone into danger it's one of those things that you're constantly concerned and you worry and you worry and you worry, and the pictures come and you're texting, and it's tough. And anyway, it's something that I want to really make clear about being a photo editor is how much we care about the photographers we work with, how much we care about where we send them and why, and you know, so it means a lot. But yeah, it smelled like Cairo this morning. So I want to thank Shahidul for bringing me here. The festival is amazing. Bangladesh, I've never been to Bangladesh before, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. You know, I've followed Bangladeshi photography for years now, and it's to be able to meet the photographers that are making these wonderful pictures, and to realize that they're such great human beings as well as great photographers is such a treat, because believe me, I meet a lot of photographers and they aren't. So I'm the international picture editor at Time Magazine. Basically, I oversee and edit and assign everything that's international in the magazine through all platforms, all editions, from Time Domestic to Time International. I really, you know, like, speaking and showing pictures is fine, but like if there are any questions, like, this is a conversation, you know, it's not me just showing you the great things we do at Time and me telling you what I think. But if you have any questions, like, let me know, man, because it's a conversation. Last night somebody asked me what I was going to talk about, and, you know, like, since the editorial market is such a mess, you know, and so you know, that's it. And it's true. Magazines, you know, are dying. Witness Newsweek. Newsweek, for me, I grew up with Newsweek. The photographers that I worshipped worked for Newsweek. Luc De La Haye and Paolo got his start there. It's amazing. It's an amazing magazine, and it's been the home for a great, influential photography for decades, and it's gone. And advertising is down, magazines are shrinking, there are fewer assignments, the budgets are smaller, the staffs are getting smaller. When you do get an assignment, it's shorter. It's, you know, things are not good. But, you know, I am an optimist, and I'm telling you that great stories, great photographs, and great photographers will survive. Despite all this bad news, we're consistently producing great work at Time Magazine, as well as breaking new boundaries and exploring new platforms that I'm going to show you tonight. And it's my pleasure to show you some of the work that we do and some of the great photographers that I work with. I'm going to go pretty quickly, but I want it, like, you know, I'm not going to tell you the story or the caption behind every picture. Clearly, this is our Person of the Year issue. It's our biggest issue of the year and our probably most important issue. And we had Nadav Kander photograph President Obama in Washington. And it's, look, this is Time Magazine, man. I mean, we can get time with the president. He gave us 15 minutes. The director of photography, Kira Pollack, was there. And Nadav is an artist, and he made this beautiful picture of Obama. And Nadav also did this picture of the Egyptian president Morsi. And I happened to be on this shoot, and it was the day before my 40th birthday. And I went up to President Morsi, and I was getting him to bring him to Nadav to make his picture. And he said, first thing he said, I said, you know, Mr. President, thank you for having us here. And he said, how old are you? Like perfect English. And I said, oh, well, I turn 40 tomorrow. He's like, no, you look way younger. Isn't that weird? I mean, how does that happen? Anyway, he gave us a great time. It was really interesting. And since then, it's been complete turmoil in Egypt. This is by Oded Belilti. A great portrait of Thinsein by Adam Ferguson. We don't just do news. We do features occasionally. Does anybody know who this is? Yes. Cool. Yeah, Super Mario Balotelli. Levon Biss shot this. Amazing, right? This is Platon. I mean, the story behind this, I'm telling you, if you go to time.com or Google Platon and Aung San Suu Kyi, and there's a video on time.com where he describes how this picture was made. It's fascinating. I can't believe we pulled that off. By Dominic Nahr. Oh, we love this one. This is by Jody Bieber. She will talk about this tomorrow night. And I was asked today, like, what was my favorite Time cover? And this is probably it, and it probably will be of my my whole career. It's amazing. And this brings us to James Nachtwey. I was a photographer before I became a picture editor, and I, like everyone, worship James Nachtwey. And so I was at the New York Times for many years, and then I went to Time magazine in 2010. And then I realized, like, I'm going to be James Nachtwey's editor, which I don't know how. I mean, it's very intimidating, and like, this is one of my idols, and all of a sudden I'm going to be looking after him while he's in Afghanistan. That being said, I mean, he's amazing, and it's the gift of my career. I don't know. It's a gift every time he sends me pictures. He went to Afghanistan for me, and embedded with this Black Hawk unit. He's so meticulous, a complete professional, amazing. And then on the side, he did this piece on heroin addicts. I mean, how does that happen? The dog. He went to Japan just right after the tsunami. He lives in Bangkok part of the year, in New York the rest. But he was living in Bangkok, and I was actually on a plane, and I got off the plane in Paris, and I saw the earthquake. And then I had a text message from Jim that he's on his way. I mean, I didn't even have to ask. That's how great he is. And he made all this happen. Anyway, this is a year later. We sent him back. And also, what I'm showing in the beginning, these are all straight from the magazine. These are PDFs. I'll get into more pictures later, but this is how it appeared in the magazine. That's why you see the captions and the headlines. And we also use pictures a lot differently. Time Domestic may do a 6-page photo essay. I edit that, then I might do an 8-page photo essay in International, and this was the cover of Time International in Asia. He's been to Burma several times over the last couple of years for me. And then this was the 20th anniversary of Bosnia, and we did a piece and actually looked back at some of his work from then. That we all know these two pictures intimately well, but believe it or not, they were never published in Time magazine. Now they are. I also get to work with Yuri Kozyrev, who I'll talk about a little bit later, but I just wanted to show you some of the work from this year that we've used. This was a cover. We sent Yuri to Yemen with the reporter Bobby Ghosh, and they went to the south where the Yemen army is battling Al-Qaeda. This gives you an idea. I just kind of wanted you to see, because look, everybody looks at Lightbox, everybody looks at time.com. Not everybody gets the print edition, which we painstakingly make every day, every week. Close on Wednesdays. But again, this is the virtue. Like, the magazine is shrinking. Yeah, this is an 8-page photo, 8-page story. Online, this is a great 35-picture slideshow. I work a lot with Dominic Nard. This is one of the pictures of the year. And you know, I was out of the office when he shot this picture, and he sent me a text message. He's like, "Oh, I got this picture that's pretty strong," and I was like, "Okay, we'll send it." And he emails it to me, and I'm like, "Oh man, that's just, it's made for a magazine spread." And look, and I'll talk about this more Friday for this editing workshop I'm doing, but editing for print is a lot different than editing for online. Editing for newspapers is different than magazines. This is a great magazine spread. You got to remember that the gutter, which is where the staple is in the middle. There's got to be room for a headline. I mean, it's perfect. It's a great picture. Another Dominic Nar from Somalia. I mentioned this in our panel today about a pickup picture, meaning I did the research and I found this photographer in Venezuela, Oscar Castillo, and you know, it turns out this guy's a great photographer. I've never heard of him until then. This is an opening spread of a story we did. Another photographer, new photographer I've worked with this year, Diego Barra Sanchez, a Spanish photographer that lives in Pakistan. And a visa fell through for another photographer. I was stuck. Someone said, "You should call Diego." Never heard of him. This is what did we call it earlier? Rolling the dice or gamble? This was a gamble, but this kid is great. I mean, I'm a big fan. Tomas Munita, another great photographer. This is from Cuba. Dominic Nar. Angelos Georginis, a Greek photographer. This is a photo essay by Lindsay Addario. This will give you an idea of how we would use a photo essay in the magazine. A young woman that died after giving birth. It's a little tough to see, but this was a very powerful piece we did, and it was amazing online as well. There was a video. One thing, and I mentioned this earlier, that I'm particularly proud of this year is our coverage of Syria. 2011, Syria was impossible to cover, and it was sort of, you know, Yuri went all over the world for me, and he did such amazing work, which I'm going to show in a minute, but we couldn't go to Syria, and the only pictures coming from Syria were YouTube videos, and it was frustrating. And I was in Perpignan, which I would suggest any young photographer go. It's a great experience. And I met this Italian guy, and he's like, "You know, I can get to Syria." And I was like, "Yeah, you know, I can. I'm sure everybody's going to say that." And I said, but I looked at his work, and his work was really strong, a keen aesthetic. He's super smart, speaks Arabic, and he had connections in Syria. And I said, "Well, you know, let me know, man." And so anyway, this is Alessio Ramenzi, who I had never worked with, and we started working together when he was in Syria. And he was on for 30-something days straight for us in Syria in February. This is before all the wires got there. This is before the borders were open. And he did, I think, what is the best work from Syria last year. And we use it on multiple covers. And then multiple spreads in the magazine, several galleries on Lightbox, which is our blog. I hope everybody knows it. He captures surreal. I mean, there's these surreal scenes of war, but you know, obviously it's a freezer where they're keeping this dead body of a Free Syrian Army soldier, but there's apples in there. It's very bizarre. Civilian casualties. I also have worked with Nicole Tong in Syria, a very young American Hong Kong photographer. She's like 27, I think. She's done amazing work. And I saw this picture. It's so subtle. The kid's father is underneath the tarp there. He had died in an airstrike. And there's just this look of shock on his face, and his shoes missing. And there's just these details about the picture. His belt's undone. It's an amazingly touching picture. It's so quiet, and it's so it's vivid, and you sense this sense of sorrow. Another picture by Nicole. Her work is very intimate. You know, she's not chasing around the snipers in the alleys like she's doing this kind of work there. Really dedicated photographer. Amazing picture. One of the pictures of the year from Syria for sure. Also by Nicole. A cover story about William Daniels, the French photographer who was with Remy Oschlik when he died in Syria. William was on assignment for us, and there were probably 12 hours where we didn't know if William was alive or not, and he was on for us, and that kind of, it was stressful. Very long story, but he was fine, he made it out, and we did a cover story. If no one's read this, I would strongly suggest finding this story, because what he did for this reporter who was injured, he basically stayed behind and took care of her until they made it out through a tunnel where, it was like a 2-mile tunnel where William, they rode a motorcycle halfway where they had to duck because it was so low, and then he had to carry her the rest of the way. It's a harrowing story. In the news magazines, it's like, it's picture after picture of misery, and then you can do that in a newspaper, and it's important, and it has to be done, but at some point there's a fatigue that sets in, and it's like, how do we do Syria different? We've done Free Syrian Army, we've done civilian casualties here, there, everywhere. What's next? So we came up with this idea, Kira and I, to send a portrait photographer to photograph refugees in Turkey, Syrian refugees that were streaming across the border. Peter is a formal portraitist. He did the protester series that was the Person of the Year last year, and he's photographed people all over the world. But this kind of situation, this was new to him, and it basically these Syrian refugees were coming off of a bus, and Peter had a seamless background set up with a light and a background light and an assistant, and it was a big production, but they made this happen, and it's a different way to tell this story that I thought was so strong. Each person has their own stories that are in the captions. We did a big piece online as well. This is game-changing work here, in my opinion. You can do refugee camps and you see the tents. I'm telling you, when readers see UN tents, they shut off. It's become such a visual cliche. It doesn't work anymore. This worked. You feel like you know these people, and especially when you read their stories. This was a wire picture by Georgios Moutafis. Strange. Another example of stuff we've done in Africa, this is Cedric Gerbe from Sudan. Really strong work. He's a great photographer. Cover by Yuri. Every once in a while we do these treated covers, and it's an art director decision, but this one worked for me. I thought it was great. This is some of the work from the Middle East over the last year we've done. This is Yuri's from Egypt, when Morsi was popular. This is Daniel Berulak, who I think is an amazing Getty Images photographer. Moises Saman, who's working for us now, he's great. Look at that. Another picture by Yuri. This is by Moises. This is just in the magazine this week, actually. Last week, by Daniel from Kumila. And then I wanted to show this because this is in the magazine this week, and the story behind this is really interesting. And we have like a bunch of Iranians here, so they know this already. But so we closed the magazine on a Wednesday, the Wednesday before, and this will show you how timing and crazy things happen where you get work in Time magazine. The Wednesday before, I got this big email from a friend of mine in Iran, Nusha Tavakoli, and she had asked me to be a judge of this competition called the Shahid Award, which is a documentary photography competition in Iran, and I was going to do it all online. It's all anonymous, and I just look at all these portfolios and I pick what I like. I'm looking through the work. I see like 10 portfolios that are really good out of 50, and this came up, and I was looking through it, and I was like, my God, this work is amazing. The story is this woman had asked her husband for a divorce. He was crazy. In the middle of the night, he doused her with acid and also doused their 3-year-old. So I saw the work, and I wrote Nusha. I was like, well, this guy, or woman, I had no idea. It was anonymous. I said, this is my choice for the winner, but I need to know who this is because I want to publish this work. Because I needed to know when it was from, and I needed to fact check it and make sure. And literally less than a week later, it was on the newsstands as a 6-page photo essay. I got a writer to research it all and make sure all the facts were right. And then we did a big piece online. Fazl Nesai. There you go. And speaking, you know, I don't know how many were at the panel today, but we were talking about foreign languages. He doesn't speak English, but someone was helping him write English to me in emails. That's how it worked. And I mean, the pictures are incredible. I was very pleased to publish this. And then Wasif brought up the question today about wire photographers and work that resonates past just simple publications. And we were talking about the Arab Spring, and I wanted to show Yuri's work from the Arab Spring. I mean, he gave his life for this story and traveled all over the world for months and months, from the end of 2010 all through 2011, all into 2012. And you'll see there's a singular vision here, and I'm going to go pretty quick because I got a lot. But you'll see the singular vision, and we're going from country to country here, and we're in Yemen right now. This is just when things started to begin. Then he went to Egypt. This was the first picture he shot in Cairo, from the window of the hotel. I can't remember. It's like Hotel Palestine. I can't remember. So he's in Egypt. Shepard Fairey made a poster of this picture. It's amazing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. Then he went to Bahrain. That structure is called the Pearl Roundabout, which slowly after the so-called revolution in Bahrain, the government tore it down, which makes that picture resonate even further. And we have if somebody wants to ask me about how Yuri and I work together later, I can describe it, but it's interesting. And pretty much if you call or write, he's on, and there's no question and there's no wavering, or it's like, yeah, I'm going. This is Libya. So he's going back and forth between these countries, and logistically, it's difficult. He has a sat phone, so he can file from anywhere, or a BGAN. And like I said earlier, I really think this body of work, and it's continuing. I mean, the Arab Spring is not over. I think it'll be looked at for many years. Still in Libya. It's a very famous picture that won World Press last year. Somebody asked the sexy question about being a picture editor earlier came up, and it's not, but I'm fulfilled. Like when I assign someone, like when Jody won World Press, I mean, I remember calling you that morning. I mean, like it's like a win for us. Like it meant so much to us, and when our photographers do well, it means well for us. And when Yuri won World Press, I mean, it's like we won. We published the picture, we sent him there, we made it, it's great. Now he's back in Bahrain. It's like that picture that won World Press. 2 days later, Lindsay Addario and Tyler Hicks were kidnapped, and at that point, after Yuri shot that picture 2 days later, he's like, nothing's happening. I'm getting these weird feelings. The rebels are playing football in the street, and there's just no pictures. And I'm like, then leave, like now. And the next day, Tyler and Lindsay were kidnapped, and he didn't want to go home. He wanted to keep going, so we went back to Bahrain. And he gets his cameras taken at the airport, and then I somehow figure out the cell phone number of the Minister of Information, and I call him late at night, and I get Yuri's cameras back. It's crazy. And he's only in Bahrain like 3 days, and he goes back to Libya because it starts to heat back up again. And these were used different ways in the magazine. Sometimes it was 1 or 2 spreads. Sometimes it was 4 pages. Sometimes it wasn't in the magazine at all. Sometimes it was just online. He went back to Yemen. That's amazing. I mean, look at that. That's amazing. And when it's like a gift when I know he's filing, and I go to the office and I go to the FTP and I start to download it, I'm shocked every time. This is the fall of Tripoli. It's an amazing picture. It's a scene of mass murder. As Tripoli was falling, Gaddafi's troops rounded people up and set this building on fire. Yemen again. Egypt. That was the cover you guys saw that was treated. And then this year, it's like, okay, so you spent all this time in Libya. What is it like a year later? And this is a year later, and places in shambles. These are all Gaddafi soldiers that are now in prison. This is a memorial in Misrata where Chris and Tim were killed. They even have a little plaque especially for them inside this memorial. And it was important for Yuri to go there because he was so close to Tim. But I'm showing you a lot just because I want you to get the sense of what one photographer's vision of this story is. And I think by the end of it, you'll sort of start to see these guys. This is back in Yemen. When Al-Qaeda was running this town, they're running by Sharia law, and these guys were accused of theft, therefore they lose their hands. It's a plastic shark. So also what we do at Time, because the magazine is shrinking, we spend a lot of time on our blog, on Lightbox. We spend a lot of time on our tablet. We spend a lot of time on different platforms. And our 9/11 anniversary issue is sort of a good symbol of what we did. And Kira spearheaded this whole thing, and she's brilliant. And I just wanted to show it to you to give you an idea of the levels of different things we can do. Kira and Jim Nachtwey re-edited his 9/11 work, and we did several spreads of that with an essay by a writer. But we also commissioned a portrait photographer, Marco Grob, to photograph people and objects that were related to 9/11 in many different ways. And I could go through all these people are, but I wanted to give you an idea of the aesthetic that Marco works in. Some of the people you'll recognize, some won't. Some are survivors of 9/11, some are victims of 9/11, some are, there's an angle towards 9/11 for each person. But it's what we did with this. Marco did video interviews with each person, which became a microsite of Time.com, which is this, where you can click on each person and you can hear their story. And we won an Emmy Award for this year. I mean, it's everybody from George Bush to James Nachtwey. Like, that's amazing. To hear Nachtwey's story about photographing 9/11, to hearing, this is a widow of one of the guys that was on Flight 93 that tried to overtake the terrorists. This is a kid that was wounded in Iraq after 9/11. And also the iPad. And I don't even have an iPad, but I edit for the iPad. And it's amazing. It's a great way to look at pictures. And this is, you might see 2 little pictures in the magazine, but you might see these cool spreads in the iPad. This is the future. I mean, the thing is we got to figure out how to make money at this. I mean, because advertising online is so little, but you get an idea of what the potential and how many pictures you can use and how it looks on the iPad. That's all Nachtwey's work, by the way, from Japan. And then to push it even further, and this might be a little, I don't know if anybody cares about this, but so Time publishes weekly. It's a weekly magazine, and this hurricane's coming to New York and the Eastern Seaboard. So how do we cover it? So me and Kira and Paul Moakley are in the morning, Monday morning, so we're going to finish the magazine. The hurricane's going to hit on Monday. We finish the magazine on Wednesday. No one's even going to see it till Friday. How do we be relevant? So we come up with this idea. What if we give our password to our Time Instagram account to photographers? And we hired 5 photographers, spread about the city, and we gave them our username and password to the Time Instagram account. Does everybody know what Instagram is? You should look it up. It's interesting. I don't love it, but it's interesting. And we have, I think, like 1.5 million followers on Instagram. So these photographers are shooting pictures with their iPhone and uploading them directly to the account. We don't even see them until they're on the account. We hired Ben Lowy. This is by Michael Christopher Brown, Ed Kashi, Stephen Wilkes, and Andrew Quilty. And they were uploading constantly throughout the hurricane. And this was huge success, and millions of people saw this work. And not only did we use it on our Instagram account, we also used it on Lightbox. And it's happening instantly. Like, we're a news magazine that comes out once a week. We can't compete in many ways with many things, but this is the way we competed with Hurricane Sandy, and it was a big success, and we're really proud of it. And so throughout the whole day and the whole storm, we're updating. But at the same time, these great photographers are also using their SLRs. This is by Andrew Quilty, and this is how we use it in the magazine. Those 4 are iPhone pictures. That's by Stephen Wilkes. That's by Ben Lowy. And for the first time ever, one of Ben's pictures, which was an Instagram picture, ended up on the cover of Time. And the reason I look, we're just trying to think forward, and I think that's the most important thing. Magazines are shrinking, magazines are closing, but I'm showing you this because we do really good work with what we're given, and I'm incredibly proud of this. And we're also pushing the boundaries of what is possible. So I want to take questions, and thank you all for coming. Dude, just go with it. Go with it. Don't ask. Look how big my hands are. Anyways, go ahead. Any questions, please, man? You gotta have something.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Is this gonna distract you all?
Totally.
I just think it's a funny way to end it, that's all.
Amazing.
I'm more serious than this, so hang on. There we go.
My question is about the difference between, there's no doubt that Yuri's pictures and the portfolio that you showed is some of the most striking images that I've seen this year. But what is, in your view, the real difference between somebody who lives in a place and somebody who goes to a place?
I think it depends on the content. I think, for instance, if I were a photo editor in Paris and I had a story in New York, the last person I would hire would be a New York photographer. I mean, unless it's like Bruce Gilden, unless Robert Frank still worked. It's strange. I sometimes think that the place you live, you can miss a lot of obvious things. I think that I'm not just hiring, and also there's extreme situations. Like, Yuri has more experience with conflict than any photographer in Yemen. I mean, period. Like, they may speak the language and know the customs and know how to get around, but they have never been shot at. They've never been around shelling, or they've never been around landmines. Like, that's huge. And while it might have been interesting each country to hire someone local, generally those guys work for wires. And generally I don't know them, and I'm not sending someone anywhere dangerous that I do not know very well. That's kind of the main reasons. Feature stories, look, that opens up a whole new thing. But this is conflict, and it's a different ballgame.
Hi. I'm wondering, as a news magazine, how much are there any guidelines or limits to how much post-production you accept?
Yeah, there's always limits. You know, I think with post-production, it's been talked about a lot. With post, I sort of see it like this. Everybody uses the same camera. Everybody uses the same sensor. Everybody uses Canon or Nikon, whatever. It's still a digital sensor. It's still a digital file. I mean, back in the day, Alex Webb could choose Kodachrome 64, and David Harvey would shoot with Velvia, and someone else would shoot with color negative or shoot with 400 NC as opposed to, you know, VC. I mean, you made those decisions then. I think the decisions are made now with your printer and whoever does your post-production. You know, over the top, yeah, I've seen it, and like I send it back. But it's my decision, you know, and it's sort of, I think I have the experience and the, you know, look, I do a lot of juries and judge, and I see stuff and I'm like, give me a break, man. This is over the top. It's just too burnt. It's too touched. But I think just a raw file, I don't think that's an expression of the photographer, and I think they should definitely work on their pictures. This is a craft also. I mean, this is a craft. Your pictures have to look good.
Do you think there's any, well, news photography, especially conflict photography, presupposes a certain immediacy. Is there some vanity element to sending them to Italy for post-production before sending them off to you for publishing?
Vanity?
Well, it's because Yuri's pictures look a lot different. That, you know, the Arab Spring sequence.
Yeah, it's all his printer is Claudio with 10B.
Right,
I mean, I have a great relationship with him too. I think, look, I don't know if vanity is the right word. I think that's Yuri's printer. I mean, I don't see that as vain. I just see it as...
his work did change from one year to the next.
When?
Well, the Arab Spring.
No, it's all the same printer.
Than before. Yeah, I know, but before.
Oh, from like when he was in Iraq?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, digital cameras changed too. I mean, you know, it's the technology, as it's increased, during the Iraq War, they're shooting with, I mean, you guys wouldn't even imagine these cameras they're using. They're crummy digital cameras with bad files that barely even shot raw. I just think that the craft has evolved to the point that, yeah, I mean, you can have a great post-production person that has ethics, that has, you know, the idea and the aesthetic that we're after. Look, if everyone, I mean, I think Claudio prints Yuri's work differently than he does other people's. Like, it has a certain look and a certain feel that he wants, and I'm on his side. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm actually doing a proxy. Sorry, we're online, by the way. We're streaming, so wave to whoever's out there and tweet as much as you like. We've just got a question from Sri Lanka, from Jeevani, saying, question to Patrick, how does one become a picture editor? What's the process? Do I need to be a photographer? We actually dealt with this earlier in the session. But yeah, but that's the question, Justin.
You know, I think everybody's path is different. Mine is pretty much this, to sum it up as quickly as possible. I studied photojournalism in college. I went to Western Kentucky University, and I did like 8 newspaper internships all across the United States. I ended up at the National Geographic, where I did an internship for 6 months. Then I did a year at the Chicago Tribune. Then I went freelance. At that point, I met, when I was at the Geographic, I met a guy named Tom Kennedy, who introduced me to Michelle McNally, who was at Fortune magazine at the time. She nominated me for the Jupe Swart Masterclass twice. I didn't get in. That's fine, because I was a juror last year, so that's all right. No, man. But anyways, so Michelle knew my work, but she also knew my aesthetic, and she knew my passion for other people's photography. I hated talking about my work. I didn't like my work. Like, I didn't have the confidence, and I loved photography, but I loved other people's photography more than mine. Michelle knew this. She got hired at the New York Times in May 2004, and then she had an opening for a picture editor. I wrote her. She said, come up. It was Thursday. I started on Monday, and that's it. Now, that's a, you know, that trajectory is weird, but I think if you have a passion for photography, and can see outside of yourself, that's important. Photographers, I mean, no offense, because I know most of you are, but you are. The world does not really revolve around you. There are.
How you say that?
I know. There are other photographers. And look, I'm going to treat you like it does, but it doesn't, because I got like 5 people going in other people's direct. I've got like 3 balls in the air. So I'm working a lot of different photographers, but like, if you have a passion for other people's work, including your own, and I know my colleague Paul Moakley, he's a great photographer and still shoots. I shoot pictures with my iPhone of my kid. It's not, but I don't have the passion to be in the field like today when I walk into the Hotel Pubani lobby and it's tear gas. I'm like, this sucks. I'm not like Zhang that grabs his Leica and runs out to it. Like, no, man. I'll hire him to go out to it, but I'm not going out to it. No thanks, man. Not only because he's going to do a better job. Like, that's not what I do. Like, I'm good at what I do. Like, I send the right person that's going to get the right picture. If I am, in turmoil that I'm not out in the street photographing the riots in Cairo, I need to be out in the streets photographing the riots in Cairo. I don't need to be at a desk. Hope that helps.
Patrick, you showed us images that you have obviously published in your magazine. Okay, you also showed how you have got Lightbox and other, electronic media that's coming up. I suppose this is a relatively simple question to ask you: whether the same image works on multiple mediums. Does the medium change the message? Okay.
I don't think it changes the message. I think it's a little bit different editing, maybe. This is a little nuanced, but like when you edit for print, you have to think about how pictures look next to each other, which is a hugely different relationship than how they feel on top of each other. And that's how you edit online. You're not seeing pictures at the same time. You're seeing pictures paced after another. That pacing is important. Look, when you look at a slideshow on Time, on Lightbox, there's a reason why they're in that order. And it might have nothing to do with the narrative. It might have to do with the aesthetic. It might have to do with the subject to photographer distance or the horizon line or the color palette. This is like nuance editing stuff here, but the message doesn't change. I think just the medium, whether it's an iPad, if it's a great picture, it's going to look great on the iPad. It might not look great in a layout that big next to another, that's just editing. That's what we do. Besides sending people out and taking care of them and paying their bills and all that stuff, that's part of what I do.
Hello, Patrick. I had one question, which is, especially with the photos that you showed of the conflict zones of the Arab Spring and everything, they're very striking images, but at the same time, some of them are, slightly disturbing, if I might say. Although I know that Time magazine is not a magazine that many adolescents or many people may take interest in, but is that in your frame of mind when you're putting up a picture, there is blood and gore and dead body, and to what extent do you publish, or what photos do you filter out as not maybe appropriate, and whether it's different for the online and the print? Or how do you work that?
It's not that different than online or in print, but there's this, there's this very fine balance between graphic and gore. Like, there's no place for gore. Gore is over the top, I'm going to turn the page, and that's the last thing I want. War is ugly, and it cannot be sanitized, and it will not be sanitized in Time magazine, as far as I'm there. But a severed head blown off. That's gory, and you're not gonna reach the people you want to reach if you try to do it that way. There were only a handful of Yuri's photographs that I was like, "Whoa, man, this is tough." There's been a lot out of Syria that I feel like the last thing I want to do is turn someone off when I really want them to look at it longer. That line, look, man, that's looking at hundreds of thousands of pictures over 10 years. I don't know how I can determine that, but I can. I don't know.
Patrick, Time Magazine is a US corporation. It's big, it's very powerful, it's very influential. It determines a lot of things. When you decide who is man of the year, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Politically, I mean, you were talking about the pictures, showing good pictures, showing how they were used. What is the politics behind it in terms of the message that you're putting out? Because many of the stories have been controversial. There have been issues raised. Where do you place yourself in that controversy?
Those decisions are made by the editor. I mean, I'm the international picture editor. Kira is my boss. She's the director of photography. And our boss is Rick Stingle, the editor of Time Magazine. Those, he chooses the person of the year. Where we fit in, I mean, the last thing I want to do is do propaganda. I mean, that's just not, and I think visually we don't do that. There are times that, we've done things that I wasn't really on board with. But again, like I can be in the room and I can say my piece and I'm listened to and I'm respected and I'm heard. But at the end of the day, it's the editor's decision, totally. And that's not me passing the buck. I mean, that's the way it is everywhere. I mean, New Yorker, it's David Remnick. Time, it's Rick Stingle. I'm often agree with them though, for the record. I mean, I'm very proud of what we do. Yeah. I didn't show the breastfeeding cover that you guys probably didn't see because it was a U.S. only cover, but there's some controversy. Anyway.
Hello.
Did anybody see that cover? Oh, you did? Good. I thought about showing it, but I was like, I didn't really have anything to do with that.
Hello, Patrick. This is Shibli from Patshala. I have a question. You are actually the eye. You are editing picture for the world is what actually world is waiting to see. So you are the gatekeeper. I have one question is, tell me 3 subjects from Bangladesh that you want to see in your picture.
I mean, this might be my own failings as a picture researcher or editor, but I have not seen a comprehensive, meaningful, in-depth look at the garment industry. I mean, I haven't. I've seen pictures of the fires, and I've seen pictures of the victims, but I mean something that if I saw it, I would want to publish it next week. Have not seen that. I've seen enormous amount of the Rohingyas. That's fascinating work. And the third thing, I don't know. I hope to see it tomorrow when I look at work tomorrow at Peshala. Hey, cool. Please.
As far as I understand, picture editing in our country is still not that practiced, especially in magazines and newspapers. Like, I work in a magazine, and there is no post of a picture editor or a photo editor. So what I want to ask you is, how does photography in newspapers and magazines suffer when we don't have a photo editor?
I think they suffer greatly, and it's pretty obvious. I think that, when I hear that there's not a photo editor, it means that, like, who's telling the staff what to shoot what? I don't even understand if, like, a news editor is doing that, or I've only worked in places where there are photo editors. If all of the photo editors in New York were to magically disappear, the magazine industry would collapse. It's a vital part of at least Time and many other magazines. The magazine, I don't know who would be looking after the photographers, who's shepherding their work in the magazine or newspaper, who is making those decisions. It would feel like a ship without a captain. I don't know. Like, I'm sorry that's the way it is. I wish there was, like, to try to influence them in a way that shows the importance of picture editing. It's very hard to do. It's easy to show the lack of picture editing because all you got to do is look at the paper. It looks like crap. And I guarantee you that photographer has a great picture, unless they're a staff photographer who's been beaten down for years because every picture they make that's good gets ignored. Then that messes with their psyche, and they're just drowning.
Patrick,
Yeah.
I have a very different questions. A lot of the times, a lot of photographers spend long time on a project. Like Eugene Smith have spent a huge amount of time on different stories for life. And when he sent his bigger edit, and when it was published, he has a big fight with the editors because he was not happy the way they have put the stories, because he thought the story has changed, or the editor has put a different voice that he doesn't agree. And he says he was in the field and he know what he have seen. And the relationship between the photographer and the photo editor is not always naive. There are a lot of power struggle. And of course, photo editors are the boss. So if there is a good photographer like Yuri, that he covered Syria and you publish his story, if he disagree with you, or he has an argument, how will you deal with that? Or how do you tackle that?
It depends on the photographer. Yuri is so easy to work with, and he trusts me and Kira so much that there rarely is any kind of conflict. The only time we disagreed about something was a World Press entry, and he won, and I chose it. So I mean, he trusts us. That's the way it is. Now, not all of them do, and I'm not going to say who, but I'm sending layouts to photographers, and there's a lot of back and forth, and it's very arduous, but you have to listen to the photographer. If I were just to make the decision myself, I mean, that's ignorant, and that's disrespectful. Like, I have to hear their point of view. And I'm not just going to blindly do it. I mean, I also, and we talked about this earlier, like, me not being there when they made the picture is important, because I don't have that emotional connection with the picture. Ultimately, the reader is who's going to see the picture. And a photographer, I've had this happen a million times, a photographer has this picture that they are so in love with, and they spent 12 hours waiting for this to happen. It's still a bad picture, and I'm not going to publish it. I mean, that sucks, but I win in that one. So, but I'm going to explain it, and I'll say, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm going to choose this. Sorry, I'm not going to listen to you. I'll hear them out, and then I'll explain. Try to think, if you didn't shoot this picture, and you've never seen this before, and you see it for the first time, what do you think? That's how you edit, or I just say, yeah, we'll get it online, man. It'll be great. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. So Patrick, you did choose Jodie's picture as your favorite cover of all time, right?
I stand behind that. Yeah.
And we have it
Yeah.
on the record. So
Yeah.
is it still very much a kind of man's world? It felt quite macho when you were showing all the images and the names that you mentioned, apart from Nicole and a couple of others.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a genuine, I'm not being facetious here. I think it is mainly a male world, yeah?
I would say maybe. Not out of anything other than coincidence. I mean, I've worked with the best female photographers in the world. I think it just so happens that most of what I showed, is international and were made by men. I mean, a lot of it's circumstance. It's not a matter of like, I'm only going to hire a dude to do this. Look, women work way better in the Arab world, I'm telling you. I mean, and I don't know if you all have had that experience, but they really do. There's less suspicion. They get way more access to women. That's why Nicole makes those pictures. Like, Yuri could not make those pictures. James Nachtwey cannot make those pictures. Dominic Nahr, none of them. No, they can't. Nicole can, And ultimately, the creator of the picture, it matters deeply to me, and it matters a lot. But at the end of the day, it's the picture that matters, and Nicole made it, and it had to be in the magazine. I wish, look, I can't tell you how many female photographers I've called, and they've been busy, so. Because they are working. There's some work out there.
I have another question. Tell us a little bit about, we always heard that these magazines are dying.
and the photographers are suffering. But on the other hand, what will you do if there is no position of a photo editor in a magazine? What kind of job you will take, or what are the struggles?
Me?
Yeah. And the photographers you see 7, they are now doing workshops all over the world, and the photographers are finding different way to earn money. And
That's good. I'm so glad this is streaming. Good.
I'm sure it's not easy for you guys too. You guys also have to struggle. You guys also have to find jobs. And
yeah, I mean, look, a lot of my friends just lost their jobs. I mean, Newsweek closed. I'm friends with all those guys. I mean, what would I do though? I don't know. I would probably have a nervous breakdown. I don't know, man. The last thing I'd want to do is be a photographer, but
and
I do have a camera.
And on a different note, when we go to the field, we have problem with the access. We have different kind of problems. Our camera can get lost. So as a photo editor, what kind of struggle you have to do in terms of, you got a great story from a photographer, and maybe you want to publish it. Maybe the chief editor has a different story in your mind. And then in the office, in a space like time, what kind of struggle you have to do?
It's not a struggle when the pictures are great. Look, if those pictures of the woman that was hit by acid in Iran, if they had been less than stellar, I would have shown them to the editor, and I wouldn't even have shown them to the editor because they wouldn't make the magazine. They were great pictures, and they're going to make the magazine. The work has to be great. That's the thing. And look, the magazines sure are shrinking. What that means, I mean, I think pound for pound, Time is way better than it was when it was 85 pages in the well. When it was a 100-page magazine, Time is better now. The photography is better. And it's because there's less space, meaning the work has to be even greater. So there's not a big struggle if the work is great. A lot of times content's a struggle. I mean, getting Syria in the magazine week after week, yeah, that's a struggle, and it's hard, meaning the work has to rise above that of saying the same thing over and over and hitting the same note. And if I was to get laid off, I'd probably be a producer.
So you don't have to disagree with the graphic designer or the art director?
Oh, there's always art director stuff. I mean, that's, like where the headline is, or like if the text is too big. There's been times that layouts have come over, and my art director that I work with is Victor Williams, who is brilliant. And we rarely have to go back and forth because we just see eye to eye, and it just is a great team. But when I was at the Times, I worked with some people that the way that the layouts were, it just wasn't working. And yeah, it's a lot of back and forth, and a lot of it is, it's psychology, man. I mean, you can't pound your fist and throw a fit. You have to pitch it in a way and present it in a way that they feel like they're getting what they want. I mean, this is all psychology, man. I mean, if they feel like they're making the decision and it's what you want, oh shit, that's like a big secret. Sorry.
Okay. One last question.
Yeah.
I saw Rupert raising his hand, and then
that is
we'll
some
close it down.
nuanced photo editing stuff there.
Patrick, can I take you back to the controversy that surrounded the publication, I forget which it was either Time or Washington Post or New York Times, of the naked girl child in Vietnam back in the Vietnam War, when I understand that it arrived very late one night, and deadline was, it was after deadline, and they spent all night debating whether they should publish that photograph, thereby breaking the taboo of publishing a naked child on the front cover. Mm-hmm. Two questions arise from that. One, where would you have been in that controversy, given the risks that were implicit in publishing a photograph like that on the front page at that time? And secondly, what do you anticipate is going to be the next taboo that's going to be broken by Time magazine?
It's Nick Utz's picture, and yeah, absolutely, I would have been on board with publishing that picture. No question. And it's easy to say now because I didn't live in the time and the atmosphere and the shock of I can't imagine seeing that picture for the first time and having the ability to publish it. Like that's something like time travel stuff, like photo editor geek stuff that I would want to go back in time and have that picture and try to relive the idea of publishing that for the first time. It's one of those pictures that no one's ever going to forget. And there's been a few like that. What the next time? I don't know. I mean, look, any kind of conflict, death, look, we've had dead bodies on the cover of Time. We've had, it's a picture that I can't imagine. It's a picture that I can't really imagine. I don't know. I hope I'm there, and I hope I make the right decision.
Well, thank you for that. Interestingly, to your question, the first decision was not made by John Morris, who was with us at the last Shobhimala discussing that and other pictures. The first decision was made by Horst Fass, the bureau chief, because it was the AP policy that there would be no frontal nudity. So Horst Fass made that decision to transmit that picture, knowing that his company policy prohibited that from happening. And he took a position. It was once it went out there, and then it went to John Morris's desk, and then John, of course, sees this great picture and uses it. So there's several layers along the way. But there are others as well. I mean, for instance, Kenneth Jereki's picture not being used.
Yeah.
The great picture that it was. And
that would be used today, I think.
Well, it went through the military pool, and it still was not being used. So there is that. But I have a slightly different question before I close this, and that is, I'll come back to the thorny issue of values, because I remember talking to Michelle Stevenson in the Somalian attack where the American Marine. Now, the picture was retouched because some part of the man's genitalia was showing, and Michelle explained quite understandably that it would have been insensitive and disrespectful to show the picture as it was, so we retouched it. It wasn't actually mentioned that it was retouched, from what I remember. However, I've seen the same magazine publish Taliban pictures which would have been just as offensive when that same sense of values had not been used. Where did you fit in there?
I fit in there in that, it's the amount of imagery that is available. I honestly, there hasn't been a instance. Well, there's been one, but it's a family issue. Like it's complicated. I'll put it that way. There hasn't been a point where the government said we can't publish something. There's been a point where a family member said we can't, and we didn't. And I can't argue with that. I mean, I'm a parent, and I can't argue with it's complicated. But we see more pictures of Taliban being dragged in the streets. We see more pictures of foreign, and they're like, well, would you have done the same thing if it was an American troop? Well, we would try, but we wouldn't get the picture. That's the thing. I mean, there's a serious level of censorship that happens with the military and the embed program that you're not going to get that picture out. If we had it, that's when the discussion starts. We just don't get it. That's the thing. We don't get it.
Well, we've gone way over limit, which is an indicator of how interesting this has been, and I can see the number of people lining up on the sides. It is ironic, however, that we have the international picture editor of Time magazine here. We've got this fabulous group of people from all over the world, and our own newspapers aren't here hungry, listening and watching. Perhaps that's the message that some of you who are in the media can take back to your newsroom, because if the change has to take place, it has to take place there as well. It has to take place at the policy level. It has to take place at the picture desk if it exists. And if we are to change it, I myself as a trainer find it very frustrating. We give photographers the skills, we give them ideas, we give them hope, and then they end up in a newspaper where they're told to take those, handshake and signing checks.
Grip and grin is what we call
those pictures. And they keep coming up time and time again. And these are the same publications that talk about standards of journalism and everything else. And somehow there seems to be a double standard there when it comes to visuals. Thank you very much, Patrick. It's been scintillating. Hope you come back to Bangladesh again.
Yeah, thank you.